Okay, so today we are talking about something that's not super exciting. We're not talking about 30-second note chops. We're not talking about crossover licks. We are talking about how you can sound better by focusing on what you're playing on the hi-hat. This is a video for intermediate to advanced drummers that are ready to start thinking less about what they're playing and more about how they're playing it or how it sounds. So we're going to talk about three things that you can think about while playing the hi-hat, and the first one is the texture of what you're playing. And this is going to relate to where you're hitting the hi-hat and what part of the stick you're using. So of course we could just not think about it and hit the hi-hat, but it makes a big difference whether you're using the tip of the stick, whether you're using the shank of the stick, where along the stick you're hitting. Are you hitting the top of the hi-hat? Are you hitting the side? And then texture, I think, also encompasses everything like how tight are you holding the hats, how open are they, and all of the variations in between. So let me just play a little bit and I'll just show you a few different ways that you can think about using different parts of the stick and hitting different parts of the hi-hat to get different sounds. Okay, so one thing that I think is important to take away from all of these examples is that none of these sounds should be better or worse in your mind. They should just be different options that may be more or less appropriate for different situations. So for example, in a heavy rock track, you might want to have the hi-hats a little more open and you might want to be using this part of the stick. Whereas in a funk tune, you might want to be lighter, hitting the top of the hats and using the tip of the stick. It's up to you. The point of this is just to be more aware of what you're playing on the hi-hat and what it sounds like, and then the effect it's having on the music. So the second thing that we can think about, which seems completely obvious, is how loudly are we playing the hi-hats? What is the overall volume in comparison to the kick and snare or whatever else you might be playing in the groove? This is something that makes a massive difference on the overall feel of what you're playing and often goes overlooked. It's kind of a cliche that younger or more inexperienced drummers tend to overplay the hi-hat to the detriment of the rest of the groove. And I want to put forth that we, again, shouldn't think of having the hi-hats being louder or softer in the mix as being better or worse. They might be just more appropriate for certain situations. So let me again just show you what it sounds like playing a couple of grooves with the hi-hats louder in comparison to the kick and snare, and then softer. So like in the first example, you may find that you like different things in different musical contexts. You might like the hi-hats to be louder in some beats or softer in other beats, but the point is just to become aware of what you're playing and make a conscious decision of how loud the hi-hats should be rather than just playing and not really thinking about it. So the last thing we'll talk about is your accent pattern. So even if you've already determined your overall volume and kind of the texture that you want on the hi-hats, you may want to accent or not accent certain beats. So for example, if we're playing a straight eighth beat, you might find that you want to accent every single note. You might want to leave every single note unaccented. You might want to accent the quarter notes, or you might want to accent the offbeats, or any sort of pattern in between. So let me run through a few examples like I just mentioned with a straight eighth beat, and we'll see what it sounds like with different accent patterns. So to wrap this up, I'll reiterate the main point, which is that you should be aware of what you're playing on the hi-hat. It's not so much that there's any one particular pattern or texture or volume that you should be playing at, it's that you should be making those 3 choices for yourself depending on the musical situation. So anytime you're playing, you can kind of flip through these 3 points and almost check yourself mentally while you're playing and think, okay, what texture am I using? What is my overall hi-hat volume? And then how am I accenting the hats, and do I want to change that at all? So the more you do this consciously, the better you'll get at doing it unconsciously and not having to think about it. And at that point, you'll just be a better sounding drummer. So hopefully this is helpful to some of you. Let me know in the comments if it is. Subscribe if you like. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.